everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Lean Bites. My name is Tim Kramer. I'm the Director of Emerging Markets here at Lean Techniques. If this is your first time here, welcome. We're glad you're here. Just so you understand, the goal of Lean Bites is to be a short 60-minute talk where we work to share simple, practical tips and techniques that you can start really applying within your organization today. I'm personally really looking forward to today's Lean Bites as I get to introduce my good friend and colleague, Jim Lowery. Jim is a technology and management consultant, and he will be talking about how leaders can support and build resilient teams. Jim has over 20 years of leadership, both in large enterprise organizations and more mid-sized startup organizations, where he's been a catalyst for several organizational change efforts, which includes guiding other leaders throughout this journey of building these resilient teams. We are excited to have Jim here to share some of his thoughts on the subject. If you have any questions about today's talk, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll either address them at the end of the session, if time allows, or we can follow via email. With that, let's get started, Jim. Kicking it over to you, buddy.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate the warm introduction. And if there was any question how old I was, Tim confirmed that with his description of my career background. So thanks, everybody, for making time for this topic today. And I'm excited to talk about resilient teams and how leaders can develop the skill sets required in order to build up their teams to become more resilient. I have the opportunity here at LT to facilitate our client-facing leadership development program. And one of my favorite workshops is centered around helping leaders develop these skills that they need in order to create resilient teams. I've chosen this topic today, not only because I've had the chance to build and work on resilient teams, but maybe more importantly, because I feel like it's a capability your organizations really need in today's fast-paced technology world, as well as rapidly changing business climate. If we were in one of those workshops today, I might ask a question like, what comes to mind when you think about resilient teams? And maybe you'd say things like, well, they're quick to bounce back from setbacks, or they're confident in dealing with adversity. They maintain their composure and performance under pressure. Maybe some of you would even say that you're lucky enough to lead a resilient team or work on a resilient team. In fact, resilient teams are representative of all those characteristics. But I think the thing that differentiates a resilient team from a lot of other teams is the fact that they actually, in the face of adversity and challenge and change, they actually leverage that to become better on the far end of that. And so they use adversity and change to grow their skills, to become more innovative, to be more creative, and to learn and continue to improve. So that's really what differentiates a resilient team from any other team that you might have worked on in your past. So over the next few minutes, we're going to explore how to cultivate these qualities in your teams. And I'm going to equip you with tactics to help create purpose for your teams, set expectations for your teams, and last but not least, and certainly not very important, backing your words with actions. And that's often a step that we as leaders kind of forget to do sometimes. Maybe you're a leader of a team today, or a group of teams. Maybe you're an individual contributor with informal leadership roles like product leader, design leader, tech lead. Maybe you lead a business operations team. My aim today is to outfit each of you with a handful of tactics that can help you begin to take your team down this path of resiliency and help them thrive in face with adversity. All right, let's start with creating shared purpose. I suspect many of you are familiar with the work of Daniel Pink, and if you are, you know that purpose is a key component of intrinsic motivation. You also know that knowledge workers like us that work in technology and are responsible for leveraging technology to build software products, we deliver greater impact when we are intrinsically motivated. Creating shared purpose is about igniting the intrinsic motivation in your teams. I would be really curious if you could entertain me for a moment to think about maybe the worst job that you've ever had. For me, I think back to when I was a teenager and walking beans. And for those of you who are maybe not familiar with walking beans, so this again is going to kind of date me a little bit, but it's really a predecessor to the high-tech boom sprayers and herbicide-tolerant seed hybrids that exist today. My dad would drop my buddies and I off in this like sea of soybeans, like this endless field of soybeans, and we would walk back and forth up and down those rows, end row to end row, and our job was to take these wicked like hook things and pull out all of the weeds in the soybean field. And like while it was great to be with my buddies and make a little money during the summer, I'll be the first to admit that job was anything but enjoyable for me. And I think looking back on that job today, I think one of the things that I realized it lacked a sense of mission for me. Like there was no real purpose in that. And my dad would argue, I'm sure he would tell you like, well, your mission was to get all the weeds out of my field. I'd probably argue that like we were nothing more than like glorified weed mercenaries. Like our job was to go out there and just continue to walk up and down those fields and pull out weeds. So, and if you fast forward now to maybe more recently in my career, we had the opportunity to build a team that was tasked with rewiring how an organization engineered software products. We had a clear mission. It was tied to meaningful and significant organizational goals. We had the opportunity to constantly learn every day. We were always continually improving. And as Daniel Pink would say in his videos, it's the kind of thing that kind of gets you out of bed in the morning. So that's the difference between a job that has a feeling of mission and purpose versus a job where your sole purpose is to complete tasks. Additionally, beyond identifying mission for your team, providing them guide rails for decision-making is another way that you can ignite that intrinsic motivation. So no team wants to have all the decisions made for them, right? It's important to establish these guide rails and allow the teams to function within those guide rails and allow the team to make their own decisions within those guide rails. And that consequently provides autonomy to a team, which a team very much appreciates. And again, goes towards inspiring intrinsic motivation. I would encourage you as a leader to be crystal clear and transparent with your team. In exchange, you'll earn their trust. And lastly, I would suggest to you to create space so teams and individuals can learn, develop their skills, and increase their knowledge. This will feed their desire, their intrinsic desire for mastery and growth. So igniting intrinsic motivation through shared purpose is one of the things that leaders are tasked with in the journey towards creating resilient teams. Let's move on to establishing expectations. Now, you might think establishing expectations is all about like roles and responsibilities. And while that's certainly part of the equation, resilient teams find deeper meaning in expectations. Expectations serve as the compass to guide their decision-making. It guides the behaviors that are encouraged as well as discouraged. It guides how they interact. It also helps you build trust and reduce uncertainty. So let's start with being explicit in creating an alignment. So you may have spoken with your team about expectations. In fact, you may even have documented your expectations for the team, thinking that that is going to maybe help you more clearly articulate to your team your expectations of them. So of course you were clear with your team. You even have them documented. And of course they're aligned, but were you clear? and are they really aligned? Now many of you know Jeff Patton, and one of Jeff's talents is drawing. And he'll often draw to illustrate the points he's trying to teach to the teams that he's trying to help build software products. In fact, if you're going to be attending the Des Moines DevOps conference later this year, I expect you'll get to see Jeff in action, as I think he's one of the keynote speakers. Jeff's a real treat, and I think you'll really enjoy his talks. Jeff often uses the illustration on the right-hand side of this diagram when he talks about alignment. And this is a diagram that we've used quite frequently in my past to help teams understand that despite your best attempts as a leader to communicate and clearly articulate, to be explicit with your teams, in fact, many times what they hear is not what you think you say. And in this diagram, you'll see that after hearing an idea, everybody looking at the whiteboard is thinking, yeah, we all understand what this thing is. But really, you'll see that each individual, one is thinking blue square, one is thinking red circle, and one is thinking orange triangle. Furthermore, when you ask the individuals to kind of illustrate the idea that you just got done sharing with them, or the expectation that you've just got done sharing with them, then they realize that, oh, that's not exactly what I meant to say, or I meant for them to hear. So we think we understand what we've said, and we think everybody understands what we've said. But the fact is, until we talk about those things explicitly, until we have a two-way conversation with our team, where that they get an opportunity to regurgitate to us what we think we've said to them and what they think they've heard from us, until we have those kind of conversations, we can't be sure that the team is really clear on the expectations that we've attempted to set with them. As leaders, I would encourage you to repeatedly or to repeat your expectations to them frequently. Make it a two-way conversation and make sure that the understanding is clear. In addition to being explicit and creating alignment, lead with empathy. So I think this empathy is a really important part of leadership, because as they say, people are like icebergs, and what you see on top of the water is much different. And typically there's much more going on below the water with people than you really realize. And change is difficult. Not everybody responds to change in the same way. Not everybody overcomes adversity in the same manner and deals with adversity in the same manner. So lead with empathy, understand that people are different. Help your team understand that with change comes new habits. And so they may need to develop and exhibit new habits. It also may mean that the team has to, or the individuals have to, retire habits that no longer are warranted or helpful. And also, lastly, with respect to empathy, make sure that your team understands that along the way, along the journey, we're going to try some things that may not work, and that's okay. Your job as a leader is to kind of create the space for them and provide the air cover for them. So when those things happen, they're allowed to learn from those things and pivot in a different direction. And then lastly, on this topic of set, communicate, adapt, and repeat, I would highly recommend, if your team isn't adept at measuring what they do today, if measurements and metrics and being data-driven aren't part of what a team does today, this is a great opportunity for you as a leader to reset that expectation and maybe more clearly articulate the fact that going forward, we're going to favor measurable evidence over anecdote. So while we all have opinions on why things might work, or what things might work and what things may not work, they're simply that. They're simply opinions. And until we have measurable evidence, we're going to continue to experiment with things, and we're going to try things until the evidence suggests that either something is working or something doesn't. Remember, that can't be measured cannot be improved. All right. So we've talked about creating shared purpose. We've talked about establishing expectations. And I'm going to finish today in this crash course around resilient teams with talking about backing words with actions. At this point, as a leader, you've maybe inspired the team with purpose. You've provided them clear expectations on what it takes to become a resilient team. But similar to a garden, the conditions are right for growth, but your job as a leader is not done. There's care and feeding that needs to happen. And the last thing that you can do as a leader is kind of walk away from that team, disconnect from that team, remove your presence from that team. So they actually need to see you now in action. And this is where you have to activate as a leader. And on this slide, I've attempted to kind of collect what I believe are some of the better practices that I've seen from a lot of the leaders that I've had the opportunity to work for over my career. So I've seen leaders do things like encourage us to make what we learn and what we experiment visible in things like demos and staff meetings and on other stages. Leaders want to kind of raise these things up and show the organization that these things are possible. I really appreciated one of the leaders that I worked with, his ability to influence the narrative. So And specifically, one of the things that we saw witness to him doing was in things like demos, he would ask us kind of guiding questions that would allow us to kind of influence the narrative of the things that we were doing. That was really powerful, and it allowed him an opportunity to kind of tie back some of the things that we were doing with strategy. And the last thing I'll say here as an example on this particular slide, in terms of kind of walking the talk and being active as a leader, is coming along with your team on the journey. So it's not just about the team doing something different. It's not just about the team learning something different. You as a leader can take part in this as well. So take part in the workshops, take part in the training, take part in the book clubs that your teams may be doing as part of their learning activities. So these are just a few examples of leadership in action. Remember, it's important for you. If it's important for you as a leader, it will be important to your team if they see it, if they see you making time for it, if they see you making it be a priority in your schedule. And I think that kind of concludes the topics. Like they said, 16 minutes goes really fast. So thank you again for everybody who attended today. And I'm going to turn it back over to you, Tim.
You bet. Thank you, Jim. We appreciate your insights in that very abbreviated amount of time. So right now we have reserved 5 minutes for any Q&A for Jim. If you'd like to stay in the Zoom, please feel free to, add those questions to the chat. Or if you want to actually speak, you're more than welcome to as well.
Yeah, if you have a leadership story to share or a leadership technique to share, the floor is yours. We would love to hear that. Can I call on people in the audience? Is that allowed in Lean Bites or not? I better not do that. They'll never show up again.
You're making the rules. You're the speaker.
Well, if you'd ever like to talk more about this, if you have questions and want to share maybe some of your leadership experiences, please reach out to me. My email's on this slide. We'd also encourage you to complete the feedback form that you'll get at the conclusion of this Lean Bites. And there's an opportunity there to express interest in learning more.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. With this, we're going to wrap up our Lean Bites. We want to thank you all for attending, and we'll be sharing out this recording tomorrow, and along with the deck. If you have any thoughts, feedback, we would love to hear any of that. When you leave this Zoom, like as Jim mentioned, a short survey will pop up for you to share that feedback. And we also hope you'll join us next month, August 6th at 11:45. We will be having Renee Rios, who will be offering up some tips for teams and organizations as they navigate their cloud journey. We'll be putting those out on our socials as well as on our website, and keep abreast of those. And until next time, thanks so much. Have a great day.